have any evidence on that?
No, I was just...
No evidence.
Did you get some cake?
Welcome back for part 2.
I'm diabetic.
Kieran, I'll leave it to you. Phones off, questions whenever.
Yeah.
Whatever, do what you like. Bye for now. There you are, Kieran, with your baby.
Okay, so we finished at the start of sensory. So sensory is an interesting one because it's really quite difficult to get evidence around sensory. So the more I've investigated the paranormal, the more I've decided that it's becoming a very personal experience. And we can buy the most expensive equipment in the world, but actually it's all about what you experience as a person, because you can have faulty equipment. And equipment can be falsified, so EMFs can be falsified by mobiles, it can be falsified by dodgy fuse boxes and stuff like that. Whereas you know as a person what you're seeing and what you're feeling. And if you lie about that, well, that's your fault and you've got to go to bed knowing that you've lied. But if you're telling the truth, and you truly know and believe in what you saw, then that's it. And I've been stood next to, like, Ryan, we've been out investigating, and Ryan can swear he can see something. He can see a shadow, he can hear something. And I'm stood right next to him and I can't see or hear it. So does that mean Ryan's a liar? No, it just means that his perception, his frequency range is slightly different to mine. Just like I can see some things that Ryan can't. It's very rare actually that you have two people experience the same thing. It's all about perception. And even though you might have the same similar experience, you'll both come away from it with completely different emotions and thoughts and feelings about what you've experienced. So sensory is quite an important one, but it's very difficult to document and to get down in evidence in order to show other people. But it could be a hot or a cold spot, sensing that there's someone or something stood near to you, as I mentioned before. And smells, that's an interesting one, because people often forget about smells. Smell is quite an important sense. To give an example, in my mum and dad's house, it's haunted by my dad's auntie, Auntie Beryl. And I talk about this in the book. I've been told to plug my book. I hate doing this book. And in what Beryl does is she used to be a dinner lady, and she used to have really odd smell of chip grease and cheap perfume. Really bizarre smell. And so you can smell that in my mum's house. You can come downstairs in the morning and smell that chip grease and cheap perfume. It's a really, really bizarre smell. No one else would have. You know, it's a unique
But
smell.
like when David goes to the toilet.
Yeah, I mean, if she could bottle that, she'd probably sell it. Johnny Depp could advertise it on the telly. But it's a bizarre smell, but it's there. And so now I talk a little bit about this in the book. But you think about, you have a thing such as smell memory, essentially, and you have things in your brain that will trigger a memory if you smell a particular smell. And I think that can work the other way around. I think you can remember something and it will trigger a smell that might not actually be there. So there's a lot of this that's potentially psychological, not paranormal at all. But people do often forget smells. So next time you're on an investigation and you're walking around, just pay a little bit more attention to your nose and what you're smelling. And you know, maybe you could be in an area that used to be a factory, or it used to be a welding pen, or a barn, and maybe you can smell the animals, or you can smell the fumes, or something of where you used to be. People forget about it all the time. Although it's difficult to capture the evidence, you can use certain things. So thermal imaging will enable you to capture a hot or a cold spot. Like I mentioned earlier about the chair that was warm, where someone was probably sitting. A cheaper version of that is a laser pointer. So you can point a light. This is what you will get pointed at your head before you go in the pub. And this is something called Stickman. I'm not a massive fan of Stickman. Do you like Stickman?
Is it stigma or stigmata?
No. That's no. Stickman is stigmata. That's where you have the Jesus.
One of my friends has it. Yeah. Well, one of my family has it.
No. So this is Stickman. So basically, this was from Xbox, the game console. And what happened was they released something called Xbox Kinect, and it meant you could play without a control, and it would sense your movements, and this is how it would do it. And a lot of people were complaining to Xbox because it was registering player 2 despite no one being there. So of course the paranormal people jumped on that straight away and went, well, you're clearly experiencing a ghost, when in fact it's probably just a faulty mechanical issue with the Xbox. And so they use it now on ghost hunts, and what you have is a split screen. You can just kind of see half of that screen there, and so you'll have a camera that will focus, and you'll see the real person, and then on the next screen it will show that person as a stick, and then if you see a stick appear next to you but you don't see it on the actual camera, it suggests that there's someone else with you. I've seen these play up so much that I don't think there's anything. I've seen a person sat there and it's registered them as a stick man, but the stick man's legs are doing like a Michael Flatley, but the person that it's representing is just sat perfectly still. So I'm thinking, well, what's that all about? That's nothing to do with paranormal. And you know, as soon as you begin to see that these kind of electronic devices can be faulty, they can't be trusted at all. But that is one way of you know, kind of feeling that something's there but not being able to see it, and this might enable you to be able to see what you can't see. It's really difficult to talk about sensory, really, because that's kind of it. You know, it's like I say, it's a very personal experience. And like I said to you earlier, you know, you might feel that someone stood next to you, you might feel that someone's walked into the room, you might be sat at home on your own and someone's just walked in the room and there's no one there, and you'll just dismiss it because you're looking, well, there's no one there. And people will, the sceptics in the world will say, well, there's nothing there, of course. But who's to say there isn't when you think about that range of perception that we spoke of at the start? There very probably is someone there. You know, this 99.75%, 65% around us that exists that we can't interact with. There's obviously something there. Empathetic. So this is a little bit kind of similar to sensory, but it's more on emotions and it's more about feelings. So you might pick up on an emotion of a room, or an emotion of a place, or an emotion of a person. You might sense the atmosphere of a room. It might change. So one of the best examples of that is people that go to Auschwitz, for example, and they walk in and they feel, oh, a lot of bad stuff happened here. Well, of course it did. You know that. It's very well documented. Yeah. So that could be psychologically you're picking up on it because you already know what happened there. What's more impressive is someone walks into a room where they don't know what's happened and they sense something and then they're proven to be right. Or headaches and bodily injuries. You might begin to have a pain somewhere and then you find out that somebody had died of that particular pain or that particular body part. Again, extremely difficult to pick up using evidence. You can't use a camera to pick up on an emotion. You can't use a camera to sense the atmosphere of a room, really. So this is where it becomes that very personal experience, and it is very personal. So one of the best I ever had in terms of empathetic is we went to a place called Whittington Castle, which is in Oswestry. And we were in a very, not large room, but a rather sizable room within the castle that they now use as weddings. And it's a very rectangular, long room. They had the altar at the bottom of the room where they would conduct the wedding, with chairs that were lined around the outside. They'd obviously bring the chairs into the middle for the wedding. While we were in there, there's about 10 of us, and we're just walking around, getting a feel for the place. And I decided to sit on one of the chairs at the one end of the room. And I was very nervous, rubbing my hands, really anxious, and kind of legs shaking. And someone next to me said, "Are you alright?" And I said, "No, I feel really, really nervous." And they said, "Well, get up, have a walk." And I said, "No, because if I get up, what I'm nervous about, I feel is going to happen. So I need to stay where I am." But eventually I did. I got up and walked around, and I felt a bit better. And then I went towards the other end of the room where the altar was. And in the corner of the room was a chair. So I thought I was going to sit on that chair away from everything, try and calm down. So I sat on that chair, and within minutes I felt really powerful. I felt really like really lordly. And interestingly, there's a lady sat kind of so far away from me, and she worked at the place, and you have to have someone there to open the rooms for you and stuff. And I said, "I feel really powerful. I feel like a king." And she said, "Well, look at that." And I looked in front, and there was a guy about 10 yards in front of me on one knee, facing me, and I shouted. I said, "Why are you kneeling?" And he said, "I don't know, I just feel like I should kneel." And I said, "Well, it's funny, because so do I." And I felt like he should be kneeling in front of me, and I felt like everybody should be. And eventually that eventually that passed. And yeah, it's gone now. And then towards the end of the evening, this lady came up to me and she said, "Really interesting what you felt there." And it turns out that this room was used for where the local lord would hold his court. And the people waiting to be called in front of the lord would be sitting at one end of the room, where I was anxious and nervous and didn't really want to get up. and the Lord would sit at the end where I was sat, feeling really powerful and quite high and mighty, and that's where he would pass his judgment on sheep stealing or whatever they would do in those days. So really picked up on that, and while all that was going on, another member of the team, I didn't know until later, was doubled over in sheer agony. Felt like he'd been shot, and of course being in a castle, he kept saying that it was like an arrow, I've been shot by an arrow. It turns out that in the 70s someone's appendix had burst out in the high street, and they took him into the castle to try and save him, and he died there with a burst appendix. So he was feeling like he'd been shot. In fact, it was appendicitis. But he was bent double with the agony. So again, you talk about personal experiences. I'm feeling something from hundreds of years ago, and he's only going back 40 years and feeling the emotions of completely different timelines. And he was and why would he pick up on that, and why would I pick? It's very, very strange how it works. This is interesting because I've been on I like to go and support local ghost groups. I like to go and give them my money and you know, experience how they investigate, because I don't necessarily always agree with how they investigate, but it's interesting to see how they do it. And you know, I've been on one where they've been walking you around the location at the start, and they say, oh, how does everyone feel? And as soon as they say that, they're fishing, they want something. So I normally just kind of keep my mouth shut, but someone will go, oh well, my leg hurts, and the person will go, funny you should say that, because a man was crushed here by, you know, and then they go, oh yeah, that's why, and then someone else pipes up and goes, oh yeah, my leg's hurting a little bit as well, and you get this kind of herd effect that we quite often see in society. And what happens, what I want to do is see the other way round. So I would like for someone to say, what do you feel? And someone goes, well, nothing. Or someone says, well, my leg's hurting. Oh, okay, fine. And then at the end of the night, say, it's funny you should say that your leg hurts because someone was crushed there and they had the leg crushed. They never do it that way round because that doesn't sell tickets and it doesn't entertain people. But we were in a room, I may have told this story last time, but we were in a room, it had 3 beds, 3 single beds and a vanity table with a stool. And I was sat on the stool and one guy was pacing, there was about 6 in the room, very tight room. And he was kind of squeezing between everyone, walking up and down. And I said, just sit down, just calm. And he said, no, I can't sit down. I said, just sit on the bed. He said, no, I can't sit on the bed. I said, I'll tell you what, you have the stool. So I gave him the stool and I sat on the bed. And within seconds of sitting on the bed, I was streaming with tears, completely hopeless. I remember asking someone if they had a gun because I wanted to end it all, just felt awful. And while that was happening, there was a lady sat on the other end of the room. It was one of those old latched wooden doors. She clicked the latch and opened the door, and someone said, Anne, what are you doing? She said, oh, I can't have the door closed, it has to be open. We then found out that there were children sexually abused in that room, and it would have happened on the bed that I sat on, and of course they would want the door open because while the door was closed it could signify that something was going on. So again, you've got 2 people picking up on emotions within that room, and that's where the empathetic experience will come in. And it's just so difficult to document. Unless you're filming someone having that experience, it's really quite difficult to capture with evidence. However, physical, so this is where it starts to get a little bit tasty. So this is where the things that horror films are made of. So physical is being touched, it's having things thrown at you. So if you go back to the categories at the start, I've got physical and interference. And there's a slight difference. For me, interference is where something enters our reality and can move things around. So the cupboard doors slam or the door opens on its own. That's interference. Of course, it's physical. But I also think physical should be more where it's aimed at you. It's like a personal attack almost. So if you see something being thrown or moved, it's interference. If it's thrown at you as an attack, it's physical. And of course, possession being very, very rare, but it does tend to happen.
There's another bullet point you could probably add to that. Okay. That would be temperature.
Temperature. I have got temperature, but I've put that more in the sensory because you feel that temperature drop. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But as I said at the start, they cross over so much. And I remember when I probably gave Ryan many a headache when I started writing the second book, thinking, how can I categorise this? Because it does cross over so much. you know, and I remember thinking about the C1 to C7 with aliens and how they've categorised each one, and you can experience a C6 without ever experiencing a C1, and I really wanted to document something like that, and try and keep it like that. So this is this is one of the first videos that I saw, and this is the video that led me to think that it was this is the house, by the way, and it led me to think this is an absolute load of rubbish, they're faking it, and I still think this video is fake. And I've told them that I think this video is fake, and they've not really commented. So this is the pennies. So the pennies. So they have pennies thrown all over their house, and it got to the point where they started to collect them. And I said, if you ask them to throw fivers, you can go away for a week, you know. But it was always pennies. But unfortunately, I mean, they even had a New Zealand 10 pence or something thrown, and no one's ever been to New Zealand in their family. They don't have anyone that's ever been.
That we had on the landing next to the Ouija board, yeah.
So what we'd done was drew round pennies and tried to use them as trigger objects to entice them to. A jar. So they started to collect the jar, the pennies in a jar, and what they did was they counted the pennies in the jar, and then when one was thrown, they would make sure that there were no pennies in the house as best as they could. They would go and count the pennies in the jar when one was thrown to see if it's been taken out of the jar. It never had been. The pennies always stayed the same amount. So where were these pennies coming from? Where were they being manifested from? Who knows? But they had, like I say, New Zealand coins and everything. Absolutely bizarre. Sometimes it was thrown directly at people, as you'll see. Sometimes they were just thrown ad hoc across the room. And why pennies? Very strange. So this is one. Yeah.
From heaven.
Oh right, yeah, maybe, yeah. But they've been thrown with some force. You'll see some photos of the damage they've done. But this was, apart from that shadow where the door slams, this was the next piece of footage I was sent, and this is what made me think, nah, this is fake. And see if you can see why. That's it. So why is she filming him put his shoes on for work? That seems a bit odd. And for me, he does this. He kind of bends down with his shoe, grabs the penny and goes and throws it over him. So watch it again.
I don't think it's coming from the top.
But he even slightly shifts himself to throw it. So I think what's happening here, because like I say, I've been down with the family, and I trust them. Explicitly, the things I've seen, the things I've experienced, some of the things you guys have seen already, this is happening. But I think what's going on here is that some pennies have been thrown, he's trying to wind her up and scare her, and he's thinking, yeah, you know, let's try and scare her a bit and have another penny thrown at you. And I think that's what's happening here. What do you think?
I didn't see the penny there at that time.
He might have had it in his hand already, and he reached out for his shoe.
I'll tell you when to watch it. So he puts his shoe on, and now he bends down, and he's coming.
But the right one.
Do you see him come over his shoulder?
Right, yeah, yeah.
One more time.
Yeah.
Doesn't look to me like he could have chopped it.
I've had people
Yeah, it's
say
coming
that.
that way, like.
No. Some people think he did it. Some people think he didn't. That's genuinely what I get. I get a split room where people say, "No, he threw that," and I get people say, "No, he couldn't have thrown that."
It's not only an impossibility. I mean, is that the only one where you
See a penny?
Is that the only one where you said that one's you thought was fake?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll show you some now where they're clearly not fake.
But then why would they fake it?
I was going to see if I...
Exactly. So what I think's happening is, as I've said, we've experienced it. We walked in the house and we had a penny thrown at us within a minute of walking in the house. Within a penny, everyone was downstairs because they're all there to greet us, and a penny gets launched from upstairs down into the living room. There was no one else up there. Why would they fake it? They've got 2 autistic children. They all slept downstairs in the living room because they're that scared. I'll show you some scratches on the children's back in a minute. They're not faking it, but I think, in my opinion, is they've had a few pennies thrown. It's before it got serious. Kelly's probably a little bit, oh, it's a bit scary, and I think Lee's winding her up by saying, you know.
Oh, so and then he can't admit it.
Well, yeah, I think he's winding her up there. Yeah.
Yeah, but he can't admit to her and say, oh, I'm.
That was me. Yeah.
So it's like he just hasn't been able to admit it.
I don't think it's him in every one.
Right.
I just think, like, imagine if, like, let's say I go home one night and Sally says, I keep hearing this growl come from the kitchen, and I'm like, oh, right, okay. And then one night I've had a couple of beers and I think, oh, let's wind her up. So she's in the living room and I start growling and she gets scared and I'm like, yes, got one over on her. And I think that's what he's doing. That doesn't dismiss the growling that she actually heard. It's just me having a bit of a laugh once.
Did he send that to you before you went to the
down,
house?
yeah.
Do you not think perhaps he created that because he wanted you to go?
Maybe he wanted the attention,
Yeah.
but the video of the shadow and the door slamming was enough to get me straight down to Essex, to be fair. I'll show you some more pennies and then see.
Where's he getting all the pennies from?
Where's he getting? Yeah, it's true. Yeah, maybe we'll find out he owns an arcade.
You'd have to go to coin people.
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
to get them.
It's particularly nowadays, because not many people deal with cash as well. It's, so we're here at the minute. So we've already had one thrown at us. We're now in the living room here. This is Elise, the responsible one for falling in a grave. She's sat at the bottom of the stairs. We're all in the living room. We've already had one penny thrown. Now another one comes down the stairs, off the back wall, and rolls into the living room. And she panics and runs in.
Check and see if there's any 1933 ones amongst them. Worth a fortune.
Oh,
Do you think you manifest?
remember that.
There's only 100 odd made.
You hear Kelly say, I need a priest, I'm telling you. So we're in there at the time. So what I like about this one is it's just that kind of sheer panic on Elise as she jumps up and runs into the...
Is he coming out the kitchen?
Yeah, he's in the kitchen. Yeah.
As soon as he comes up, he's looking up.
Yeah, because it's come hit the back wall, and so it's hit the back wall over Elise's head. You then hear it hit the floor and roll into the living room.
You know, you said she fell in the grave. Is it possible she was pushed in?
She was drunk, so I don't know.
Right. So it'd be easier to attach to her if she's drunk.
Probably her defences would have been low.
Yeah.
So here we have Lee's again. Lee, he's on the landing, and he says to the dog, "Big man." He calls the dog Big Man, and I think the entity thinks he's mocking the entity, and the entity throws a penny.
Big man. Are you coming with? Come in. Oh, fuck off!
Response as well.
I don't give a fuck.
So that would have gone over him down the stairs, and then there's the next video is that they're still coming down the stairs, and then another one's thrown.
He's always getting films when it's happening.
So she says, just thrown another one. The reason it's being filmed is because they're motion sensor cameras.
Oh, right, thank you.
So them just moving around the house is triggering it. But the reason we went for motion sensor was one, cost. If they're constantly running, it will cost a bomb. And also, when they're not in the house, when they're out, she will get sent clips of what's going on, so she'd know something was happening. And the other reason is because it's just to the point. Who wants to sit through 3 hours of footage waiting for that one penny to be thrown? You know.
How would you know when it was going to be thrown?
Exactly. So it's that the motion sense was really the way to go. This is one of the best ones. So here A penny's just been thrown down the stairs. The kid shouts up, "Was that you?" He lies and says, "Yep, that was me," because he doesn't want to scare the kid. He wants to, the kid, and then he starts talking to it, saying, "Don't start this shit now. We're going out," and he's getting ready to go out. So this is that camera, remember, where that big shadow was before. This would have been the wall where that little shadow ran from the bedroom into the bathroom. And then what you see here is, you'll see as he's about to go down the stairs, a penny gets thrown off the door here, and you actually see it land on the floor. So I like this one because you actually see it.
Hi.
Just picked it up, look.
What's that, mate? Yeah, it's me, sorry.
Says that was me, sorry.
Oh no, sorry. Come on, that's it. You watch that fucking one. Fucking start that shit out, don't
There it is. So again, just it's quite a long one, that, but yeah.
Hi. What's that, mate? Yeah, it's me, sorry. Oh no, sorry. Come on, that's it. You watch that fucking one. Fucking start that shit out, don't
And I've watched that because he picks the penny up at the start, and I'm thinking, so does he throw that as he goes down the stairs? But when he gets thrown, he's got both hands on his coat, his arms don't move, he can't have thrown the penny that he's recently picked up off the floor. So where does that one come from? Really interesting. And like I say, it's all about the kids, trying not to scare the kids. He's having to lie and say, yeah, I threw that penny at you, because the kids have got an awareness of what's going on. This is a direct hit, so he gets hit with it now, so more swearing.
Fuck off!
Good, that one. Now this one's interesting because there's a little bit of chaos at the start. The dog's made a leap for it, the kid's worried about the dog, and it's all because Lee's mate's come round. So he's obviously told his mate our house is a bit haunted, and his mate's here, whatever. And now his mate gets hit with one.
I'll leave the door open then. Oh, my fucking way!
There it is on the floor. And then he says that's because Kelly says that's because he's just had a go at him, and he says, yeah, I've just pissed him off. And so he's just come in, and yeah, so what's happening is, I love that video because it shows it's not just for family that are experiencing this. You know, this is basically what happened with us, wasn't it? As soon as we walked in.
Oh, my fucking way!
Stay on the floor. And this is the damage that it's done to the plasterboard, to the walls. Now what I find interesting here is if you were to throw a penny at the wall, it would catch with the edge, so you just have a line in the wall. It would be so difficult, well, impossible, for the penny to land face on, and it's almost like someone's got the penny and pushed it into the wall.
Well, that's like a sort of impression you get off a ball or something, right?
Yeah. But that's clearly coin.
Yeah.
Let's chipped the plaster, and again here, it's kind of round.
Yeah.
So that's the force that these things are being thrown with, and of course you can hear it as the pennies are hitting the floor. A lot of damage. That's the Christmas ornament that was thrown across the room and broken. Snapped in half. The children were in the room at the time. Yep. So this next one is punching. So this is where he gets punched. So I'm going to show it you first, and then I'm going to try and explain what I think about this. So you hear it, which is weird.
Yeah.
So
why do they keep sitting on the stairs?
I don't know. I don't know. I think for him, you'll have the kids kind of. The living room will be full of toys and stuff, and I think he's gone away. He's having a cigarette, so he's moved away from the kids, and I think it's just.
No, I just mean that's where they keep getting like attacked.
Well, it's like I said at the start. I genuinely think that's the epicentre, the landing area and down the stairs.
Why would you, and then you would just avoid it, wouldn't you?
Oh right, yeah, I see what you're saying. The problem is they don't live in a mansion. Do you know what I mean? And they can't.
Full of tat.
Yeah, he's right. It's not the cleanest, is it, right? So when we were there, we were hearing scratching in the living room. So we're in the living room. Above us is the master bedroom, and we kept hearing this like kind of noise. What is that? So the first thing I said to them is, "Do you have a vermin problem? Do you have rats or mice?" And of course they said no. But it was very strange that we could hear that kind of scratching noise. And then while we were in the living room, we were doing a spirit board, and probably some of the best audible evidence we've ever had, which wasn't captured on camera, was footsteps. So we were all in the living room doing this spirit board, and above us on the landing we heard 3 very clear like that, but there was the landing's very squeaky as well, so it was like the squeak of the floorboard and then the door that you saw earlier where we had the shoe thrown at us, the door opened, and we had the door open on camera, but we didn't pick up the footsteps. And I'm a big lad, but it's the fastest I've ever moved. Sprinted up the stairs, nothing there. We were all in the living room. There was no one there, and clear as day, it was 3 heavy set footsteps, door opens, and that was it. But it's that landing again, it's that landing area, you know. So so anyway, with a punch, so this is a tricky one because how easy is that to fake? And it's probably quite easy, you know, people in films and TV shows, they never actually get punched, they pretend to get punched. So it's quite easy too. How much drama training Lee's had, I don't know. Probably very minimal, but I think in this instance he sat down, he's not expecting anything, he's having a cigarette, the camera's come on because it's caught him moving around, and he's just relaxed, you know, he's having a fag, and when he gets hit, just before he gets hit, he looks that way as if he's sensed there's something there. His body rocks and his leg shoots out. And I think if you were going to fake that, that's a lot of detail to think about. Just the leg shooting out, you know, trying to balance yourself almost. If you were faking it, you'd just go like that, you know. But how do you explain the noise? You know, his leg comes off the floor, so it's not thudding, but you hear a thud. His arms are visible, he's holding an ashtray and a cigarette, so he hasn't hit the banister or anything. And his body is rocked. His body is absolutely rocked by this punch. She sees his leg kind of rock out a little bit. For me, I mean, I'm no expert in analysing body language, but for me, he has felt something there. Something's hit him. And his reaction straight after, I've cut the video, but his reaction there is he's getting up. He's like, oh, what? No, I'm not having this. He's off. Really interesting footage. Really. I'll just watch it one more, because I just want you guys to kind of just watch his body, you know, that foot that shoots out to balance himself. The fact that just before it happens he looks as if something's approached him and he wants to see what it is.
He's just looking upwards before he went in that room.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now he looks whack. You know, if I was stood here now and someone started to approach me, I'd feel that. Everybody feels that. So it's almost like he's, you know, what do you want? And this thing's hit him. Really interesting footage. And then scratches. So you can see these scratches all on. So this is the at the time the 7-8-year-old kid, and he's got all these scratches on his back. Now kids will be kids. Kids will fight. Kids will scratch. Will bite. But Kelly was adamant that they hadn't been fighting. The child had woke up screaming. The children often report being grabbed around the throat, having growls in their ears, being touched, having bed covers pulled off them. And this is why they were all sleeping downstairs in the living room, because the children are absolutely petrified. It's a shame, really. Interference. So this is slightly different from physical, as I say. Any questions on the physical? Oh, okay. Interference. So this is slightly different because this is where I think something comes into our reality and will move. So I've mentioned the Enfield slipper. Does anyone know what that means? No. So the famous incident at the Enfield haunting where a slipper was thrown in the bedroom. It disappeared through the floor at the same time that the policeman downstairs reported to see a slipper come through the ceiling. So when we talk about things that operate outside of our frequency range, how many times do abductees, alien abductees, claim that they've been lifted from their bed and taken through a window, not an open window, a window, or through a ceiling, because they obviously have the ability to alter the atoms, alter our reality, because nothing is really solid. That's just our perception. So again, when you see a spirit walk through the wall, do they have that same ability? They can alter that kind of reality because it's not really there. So yeah, so that's an interesting thing with the Enfield slipping. You'll see something in a minute. I'll show you. So items being moved. So you might see your remote control kind of move across your table on its own. Equipment being messed with. So the K2 meters that you use and things like that. The spirit boxes that you use, and items manifesting from nowhere.
This can quite often happen after someone has died. It's residual energy.
Yeah. I did ask them this. I said, has anyone kind of recently died in your family? And the answer was no. Which is why I don't think it's directly connected to them. I think that it's been brought in. So interference. So you can capture interference by EMF meters, REM pods, spirit boxes, and of course the famous spirit board. And that's how energies or entities can interact with you. So this was while we were there. We captured this on our camera upstairs. You see this here? You see these orcas flying around. So that is this. So it's an Xbox toy, and this operates exactly like your remote control. That's interference. Exactly like your remote control, which is kind of operates with this infrared here. And when you push this button, you can't see that. But if you were to film that with your phone camera, you would see the red light flash. And that's the same here. They push a button, it operates infrared and controls the game that they're playing. But in order for that infrared to flash, someone has to be pushing a button. So this is lying on the bedroom floor. Flashing. So something is touching that toy and pushing that toy in order to make the infrared flash on the camera. So who's doing that and what's doing that? So I remember I said the K2 was crazy while we were on the stairs, constantly flying up and down. So here it is down the bottom. So it's settled. It's just on the green. We're just setting up the spirit board. This is my arm. Smells. So you can see me, I'm filming this and I'm pulling the camera away thinking, is it my camera that's interfering with this,
Okay,
maybe?
Put the K2 down. There's nothing electrical around here. It's not the camera. Because if I move the camera far away, it still goes. Something's making that spring. So, we've done a K.
So that's interesting. And then here we have Kelly coming out of the kitchen and something's thrown off the shelf. So, really? So some folders have just been thrown off the shelf in the back room there. If you look, you can actually see them land on the floor down here. Really? I think that's the first time we've seen her. Yes. Now, this is the last bit of evidence that I'll show, and we'll start talking a little bit about theories and stuff. But this is their equivalent of the Enfield slipper. So, set this up. So, if you remember the hallway, you've got the solid wall where the bedroom and the bathroom, and the shadow came out and has closed the door. There's nothing there. There's a camera right up in the corner. It's motion censored. It's triggered by things that move. This is about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. The family are asleep downstairs. The child has gone to sleep. They've taken their onesie and their slippers off to go to sleep. But somehow the onesie and the slippers now manifest through the ceiling of the landing and land on the floor. That's it. Short and sweet. And as it lands, 2 orbs fly off, by the way. But I need to quickly get out of the way here. There you see the 2 orbs come out. There's nothing here. We've tried out so much to recreate this. We chose, as the slimmest member of our team, to try and wedge himself up the wall to see if he can throw something from behind the camera. You can't. It's motion censored. It knows he's there. It's already started filming him. You also kept seeing his arm kind of coming in front of the camera as he was throwing what he was throwing, because you can't go back because of the wall, so we had to kind of like throw it like that. And these onesies and slippers, as I say, were downstairs, and they've literally come out of. And the reason you're missing a little bit at the start is motion sensor, so you miss that millisecond. So there's movement, it kicks in, and then you get the clothes moving. Where the hell have they come from? Remember I said at the start, there's the shadow moving and the door closing, and there's another piece of footage that blew my mind, and it's that. One more time, just because I love seeing it. It's the orbs after as well. Really interesting. And look where it is, as always, on the landing. The epicentre. I think this wall is where it comes and goes. I think that's the area. You talk about energy areas. I think that's the area.
Would ley lines be any?
Yeah, so that's the next thing that we're looking at for this documentary.
Yeah.
We're looking at that kind of thing. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about theories and the future. Has anyone got anything to say on the evidence that you've seen?
Yeah, the spirit box
in a minute. Anything else? No?
Our spirit board sent you notifications.
Okay, so the future of paranormal evidence, and can we ever trust what we see or hear again? So has anybody watched that, apart from the one that I've kind of said, look, the dog was rattling, and I think Lee threw that penny. Has anyone else watched any of that evidence and thought, nah, not having it, fake? You thought it was all true? That's interesting, because
I think there is some bits that could have been other people involved. But
okay.
if you've been.
But I'm not asking you to trust me,
Yeah.
as nice as that is. It's for someone who's just seen that evidence for the first time. I haven't told you any backstory or
You
anything.
would always be a bit sceptical.
You'd always be a bit
There's
sceptical.
So many, like most haunteds have changed so much, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right. And I think what you've just said there, Dawn, is basically the epitome of how people view paranormal evidence. Because I personally don't have much hope for the future of the paranormal evidence. Because what's happening is we have this huge emergence of CGI, Photoshop, computer programs, all these things. And as much as we have technology that can capture more outside of our perceptive range, so do we have this technology coming up alongside it that can equally fake everything. And the problem with that is if you show a skeptic, if you show someone that's on the fence, they will always say, that's Photoshop. How many times do we hear that? Particularly with UFOs and stuff. That's Photoshop, that is. Or no, that's fake. Or, well, there must have been someone behind the door who slammed the door. It's obvious, you know. And people just dismiss it like that all the time. So how can we ever... We could put what I would deem the best piece of footage in front of someone and say, you cannot deny that. And someone will. They might not have any proof to back up their denial, but they will just refuse to believe it.
I've got a feeling of really chaotic energy.
Yeah, it's a dark energy, a dark entity. Yeah, definitely. But the house is chaotic. They've got children running around. As you said, it's the house is chaotic.
To know if there's any water running underneath.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I remember there weren't any rivers or anything nearby.
Yeah, because that fractures the energy.
Yeah. So I don't think the future is that great, really. And this is where I've started to look at it from a personal perspective. If I've experienced something, that's all that matters. We've got to get out of this mindset. Why do I have to convince Joe Bloggs down the road that ghosts are real? Why do I have to convince Joe Bloggs that aliens exist? Why do I have to do that? Is it to make me feel better? I was talking earlier to someone living in this echo chamber where I want everybody to have the same thoughts as me. We need to get away from that, and we just need to live our own life. And if you believe in fairies because you've experienced fairies and you've seen fairies, what does it matter that nobody else does?
Well, it's like asking somebody why they're wearing a mask.
In what sense?
Well, with this COVID shite,
yeah.
You know, like somebody in Tesco saying, "Why are you wearing a mask?"
You don't want my videos banned on YouTube, do you?
Yeah. I think there's just no need to prove, in my opinion. You know, why do I have to capture evidence in order to prove it? I've experienced it, and that's all that matters. If you do happen to capture any of it, as we have done, then it's great to look at, it's great to review, it's great to debate, but, you know, does it matter? It's not the be-all and end-all. And that's how the paranormal society, the paranormal field have gone, buy the most expensive piece of equipment because that will give you the best evidence. And it never does. The best evidence is, that person that you saw with your own eyes walk in front of you. That's the best piece of evidence that you'll get.
The ethnic societies don't have our problem.
No.
To them it's completely natural.
And I wonder what, yeah, exactly, yeah. The other thing with the paranormal evidence is the society that we live in, and the fact that we're told from a young age ghosts aren't real, paranormal's rubbish, children have imaginary friends and we tell them, well, he's not real, so stop being silly. Who's to say that they're not interacting with spirits? And the more you tell them it's silly, stop talking, there's nothing there, they switches them off, so that the next time they'll say, no, go away, I can't, Mommy said I can't talk to you. And then eventually it will either stop coming or he will just, the baby will switch it off and just not see it. And then we'll spend the rest of our life not seeing it. So for me, the future of the paranormal hinges on several things. One of them is not being so hung up on having to prove that it's real. But also it hinges on, I think, really us stepping out of this. We're very stale at the moment. I think it goes to say with a lot of things. We're using the same old equipment, we're asking the same questions all the time, we're thinking about the same theories, and we're approaching it the same all the time, because that's what they do on TV and that's what they did 10 years ago.
That expectation thing that could build up and build up and build up.
That's right.
Going to destroy it.
That's right. And I think what we need to do is get away from that and start thinking outside the box. Start thinking about new theories. And, I've been shot down so many times, but I don't really care. And you just need to kind of think, well, what could it be? Because, so this has led me to believe, as I was speaking to a few people during the break, and I've mentioned a little bit, that I don't think that these spirits that we're encountering are dead people. So I believe in a universal consciousness. I believe that we are all the same consciousness. And when we die, this consciousness leaves us and it goes back to the universe. It's just energy. You can't destroy energy, and the energy will leave this vessel and go somewhere else. And that's what you're interacting with. You're interacting with this energy. Now this energy is everything. It's everyone, it's everything there ever has been and everything there ever will be.
It's also trees, flowers,
it's everything.
grass.
It's everything that exists within the world. It's vibrating in this table now. It's what's causing the atoms to create this table. So when you wake up in the middle of the night and you see your mum, who died 3 years ago, stood at the bottom of your bed, is it your mum? I don't think it is. I think when you're seeing your mum, and you know, I think we spoke about these things that just happen around you. They go about their daily business. They don't interact with you. That's this time slip, and I'll come on to that. But I think when something interacts with you, I think you're interacting with yourself. You're interacting with your own manifestation and your own beliefs. So this consciousness can manifest as your mum because it once was your mum, and it is your mum, and therefore it can portray itself as your mum. So people that see Bigfoot, people that see UFOs, people that see ghosts, ultimately, if you strip away the hologram, they're all the same piece of coding, and what they're doing is they're manifesting their own belief onto it, and then they're getting back what they want. If you want to see a Bigfoot, you will see a Bigfoot. If you want to see a UFO, you will see a UFO. If you want to see a ghost, you will see a ghost. And that's your own belief. The Virgin Mary. If you don't want, and people don't, but people won't. People will see one, but they'll say, "No, it's rubbish. I dismissed that. Didn't see it." And what you'll get is that, like, the Virgin Mary only ever appears to religious people. Never appears to someone that's not religious, because they want to see it. So they will perceive that particular paranormal experience as being the Virgin Mary. If you want to see a Bigfoot, you will see a Bigfoot. And I think that's what's happening. And the more I research, the more that's what I'm beginning to believe. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying that that's the be-all and end-all. It's just a theory. And that's where I am with it at the moment. That it's all the same experience, manifested differently.
What about if you see somebody in spirit, and you didn't know they were in spirit? So you know when you hear about people saying, "Oh, I seen somebody at the foot of my bed one night. The next day I found out Gary's uncle had died at the time I'd seen this man."
That's an interesting point.
How do you explain that? Because it's a visitation, isn't it?
It is a visitation, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Could it be, thinking out loud, a time slip again, where you know you've already experienced them dying because it's already happened? And do you know what I mean? Like I said, none of this is set in stone. None of this is me theorising and trying to debate. But this doesn't happen, unfortunately. People think, no, they're dead people. That's what it is. We can't discuss it any further. Let's not theorise, and that's why we've become so stale.
It's an interesting theory what you're sort of bringing up. Whitley Strieber, who UFO encounter in upstate New York, he kept seeing an owl. Right, that was the image in his mind, and that was the image that they were projecting into his head. And in a lot of UFO cases, they will take images from your memory bank and use that
screen memories.
Yeah, is a familiar thing to see. It's a common thing. A bit like what you were talking about. The religious people always will say Mary or Jesus, especially in the case of like Medjugorje and them all, the one in France and things like that. So they're using screen memories in your bank of familiar images and things like that. So
I think it's screen memories, it's your memories, but it's also your beliefs. You know what I mean? So like you're encountering this paranormal entity, this energy, and what you want to see is what you will see. So if you have a strong belief in the Virgin Mary, if you have a strong belief in Bigfoot, if you have a strong belief in UFOs, that's what you will get back. What you're putting out is what you're getting back, because ultimately you're creating your own reality, your own universe.
So
now,
perhaps we're all just interacting with this this energy, and
perceiving it differently,
projecting our own
Yeah.
Or the perception.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think, and that's why when I can be stood next to Ryan and we both have completely different experiences, or I might not even experience anything, because that's what's going on.
You see, you know, we've got Graham here, and he's experienced spirit in solid body form, and shook their hands and touched them and things like that. That goes into a different dimension. It enters a new area that most people will never experience.
Definitely.
That. It harkens back to the old days of spiritualism where they had full physical manifestations and that.
Yeah, which we don't really get nowadays, really. Of course, when you start to talk about this whole, you know, people say, well, what's the difference between pushing out your belief and getting that back? What's the difference between that and just imagining that that's happened? Well, there is no difference, really, you know, and it's a very blurred line between reality and imagination, you know, as Morpheus says to Neo in the Matrix, you know. Well, all that's real is electrical signals in your brain determining what you think is real, and that's really all it is. And the problem is then is if you're imagining it, could it be that any paranormal experience is all in here? There actually isn't anything paranormal, because if your reality and your universe is all in here, then the paranormal is in here as well. And if you live a life in a universe where you refuse to believe in the paranormal, you will never experience anything to do with the paranormal.
See, Sheila brought up the thing about, because in the East, they don't separate mind and body.
No.
We do know, you know, and we know the agenda that they want is to disconnect us from God's source. Because we have that divine, we are a facet of the Creator.
Yeah. Well, we are the Creator.
Yeah, we are the Creator.
So I think the other thing is this time loop. So we always think that, you know, time is linear, and I don't think it is. And I think it's all existing now, essentially. The only thing I was saying again at the break, the only issue I have with that theory is you never have anyone who time slips into the future, really. It's very, very rare. It does happen, but it's rare. So if time isn't linear, and when you're experiencing something like a spirit or a ghost, and you know, when you see a woman walk through your room, or you've had a time slip, you know, people will say, well, I was walking down the road and all of a sudden there were horses and carriages coming past and the buildings changed. And now, you can't, if you believe that a spirit is a dead body, a dead person, then how can you see the spirit of a house? How can you see the spirit of a gate, or a train, or a car? You can't, because it was never a living thing. So that theory is out of the window there, because you can't...
It's a conscience, it's
you can't,
conscious.
Well, I think it's the time slip. I think it's the time, and that's why you can see inanimate objects, and the people as well. But you never have a time slip into the future. There are experiences, but they're very rare. It's very, you know, someone doesn't walk down the street and say, and all of a sudden there were flying cars, and you know, people were kind of on these weird gadgets. And it's always, well, I was walking down the street and all of a sudden Victorian men were walking past me, and there was a horse and a carriage over there. And so the only thing that puts a dampener on that theory of, you know, everything is now, is why doesn't anyone ever slip into the future?
Have you watched the film Back to the Future then?
To my shame, no.
No, there's an interesting documentary that shows you the things that were predicted in that film.
Yeah.
When he goes into the future, so many of the things
have happened. I think that's the same in
like the gadgets, the hoverboards, everything.
I think that's the same in a lot of sci-fi films, though, isn't it? There's a lot of sci-fi films
have
where
they had a glimpse in the future? That's what I'm saying. Have they been in the future?
I think there's an element of that. I also think there's an element that the films influence the future. So you know, you get these people like Elon Musk and stuff, you know, who will watch films and go, God, that'd be awesome if I could do that. So it's influenced him to go and do that, and then people will think, hang on a minute, that film predicted that would happen. Well, it didn't. It just influenced it to happen. Yeah. But I do think there's elements of people at the very top of the pyramid, essentially, know what's coming, and they put that out in predictive programming in films and TV shows and stuff. There's an element of that, yeah.
I'm just very curious. I used to know a gentleman called Mr. Fishwick, you know him, and he was at a spiritual seance once, and the medium said to him, you don't know this person, but I need you to go to this address, and she gave him the address, she gave him the young boy who was in the spirit world who committed suicide, and she gave him the name of the parents, and she said, please go and tell them the son is all right. So he went, and he forgot the house number, and so he went to the postman was there, and he said, do you know where Mr. lives? And he said, oh, they've moved to the next street. So he went to the next street, knocked on the door, and he said, I don't know. And the man and women come to the door and said, he said, I don't know if you will accept this, but your son has come to me in a spiritual seance and told me to tell you he's all right. And the woman started crying. She said, oh, our son committed suicide, and but you've really helped us, because we were praying to God. We were praying to God that he was all right. You know, so how does something like that happen?
Well, again, you know, I would say, why would, of all the people the son could have gone to, why would he go to that? You know, that person isn't spiritual. Clearly, he's not. This is new to him, being told to go and deliver a message from the spirit world. Why wouldn't this boy go to the family directly? Why wouldn't he appear to them directly?
Because the family were Roman Catholic and they had nothing to do with anything like that.
So their belief system wouldn't allow them to see the son at the foot of the bed. Their belief system wouldn't allow them to believe or to perceive their son as a spirit. So does that mean he couldn't go to them because they wouldn't believe it? Or he couldn't go to them because they wouldn't see it, because their belief system was preventing them from perceiving it? Interesting.
Yes, a friend of mine came to me after she passed. I was in bed, there was a knock on the bedroom door. It was like a dream, but not a dream. And she was standing there, she said, oh, sure, my mum. I said, fine, go. And I went, and sure enough, my mother was ill.
Well, yeah. There's, the thing is, like, we could stand and talk about this all day, and that's what I love. Yeah. But it doesn't happen enough. I've been on ghost hunts where I've said on a spirit board, are you God? Have you met God? Have you ever seen God? And I've actually been kicked off the board. You can't ask that. We don't do that here. It's like, well, why not?
We've done it a couple of times. I've said, whichever spirit came through, I've said, how's God doing? And it's actually spelled out, okay.
That's good. But I've been told, like, I've been reprimanded for that, and it's because we don't do that here. That's disrespectful. But to be honest, I couldn't give a toss whether I'm talking to a man or a woman. I don't care how old they are. I don't care, you know. And I want to know the big questions. And if we are having an interaction with this energy, then I want to know bigger questions.
So do we.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, what sells, we were talking about this at the break, what sells is the fact that it's your mum. What sells is that you can talk to your dead dad. And that's what people want. They don't want to be told that it's something else, or that it's actually nothing at all. And so we kind of get in this vicious circle where, what do the people want? They want this, right, so we'll keep giving this. So then the people come to expect this, so we have to keep giving this. And then people don't discuss things like this, and we kind of plateau and become very stale. So it's a shame, really, but that's how it's going to go.
I think part of the paranormal that we miss is our dreams.
Yeah.
Because if we don't see things awake, then we do see a lot more.
But that's the subconscious mind, isn't it? And a lot is happening in the subconscious mind. And when we're awake, when we think we're awake and we're in this solid reality, as I say, you sense something next to you, you see that there's nothing there, you dismiss it. And that's the problem. We have a lot of societal pressure telling us that ghosts aren't real. We have our own kind of consciousness telling, well, there's nothing there, so we can't be real. You hear a knock and you say, well, it was clearly the breeze blowing the vase, so you dismiss it, you create a reason as to why it couldn't have been paranormal, and that's it. And you just dismiss everything. And when you're in this dream state, you're kind of not in control of yourself at that point. You're not in control of your consciousness, and so you might be more susceptible to experiencing things that you would normally just dismiss straight away.
What would you say the difference was between paranormal and supernatural? Or is there a difference?
I don't think there's a difference really. I think paranormal can, like I've said, really get bogged down into paranormal is ghosts and UFOs are UFOs and Bigfoot is cryptids. But I think it's all paranormal and I think it's all connected. And I think supernatural is more maybe when you start yeah, it's when you start to think it's more maybe like curses and Wicca and that kind of thing. I would class more as supernatural, something where you can, it's kind of out of your control almost. But I think there's not that much difference, really.
No, a friend of ours, she was a priestess of Hecate, and she passed over, and she lived in Glastonbury, and they had to register her death at Truro, and they went down to Truro, it was winter, but when they came back their car was followed by a white owl. Now a white owl is the familiar of Hecate.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, owls are very weird creatures.
About Hecate.
Okay.
You can get this over,
yeah, there's a lot of, you mentioned, someone mentioned earlier about owls appearing.
yeah,
Yeah. There's a book by Mike Clellan called Messengers, he talks about alien abductions and about how a lot of owls appear during alien abductions. And are they screen memories, or is it because owls look like the greys with the big eyes? Is it do owls just have a sensitivity to paranormal energy, so they just happen to be in that vicinity at the same time? I mean, so many times people will see a UFO or a Bigfoot and they will also experience something else at the same time. You know, Bigfoot often appears at UFO hotspots, and there's a lot of people within the cryptid world who say no, it's flesh and blood, it's just flesh and blood. But I don't think it is. I think it's an interdimensional being, and that's why, you know, it can be so I guess you can just go missing in the forest. You know, you never see dead bodies, you never see anything like that, and I think it's because it is interdimensional. And what I mean by that is it lives and exists outside of our perceptive range. Really,
I think it's interesting that greys are grey. Because if they're interdimensional and they're not solid, are they seen as almost like a wraith? Yeah.
I think, again, it's funny you should touch on colour, because what is colour? You know, to someone who's colourblind, it might not be grey, it might be a different colour. Does that mean they're wrong? No, but in their reality, in their perception, that's how they see it. I think all of the aliens are interdimensional. I truly believe that.
Yeah, because I mean, colour is vibrational. Every colour has a vibration.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And red has the longest vibration, I think, and that's why it attracts our that's why it attracts our attention. That's why we have red stop signs. The lady in red in the Matrix that catches Neo's attention and stuff. And so it's interesting because, as you say, everything has a vibration. Everything. So everything has this kind of energy running through it. And that's all I am. I'm just a bunch of vibrating atoms that happens to be conscious, because I have the brain, which is
also it's the vibration for this dimension.
Yeah, and we can alter that, and it can be altered. And if you think the people that kind of rule us, I guess, if you understand how people perceive the world and how you can change a person's perception, it becomes very much easier to control them. As we're seeing now.
What's your theory about all the people that go missing in the national parks?
411.
Yeah.
I think the Tory party's got a lot to answer for with their children. I don't know, there seems to be hotspots around the world, doesn't there? There seems to be places where a lot of people go missing. The Bermuda Triangle, for example. Could it be some kind of portal, some like gateway into another dimension where things come and go, and they just happen to go one way and never come back?
Your house. Things go missing in her house, especially money.
Money goes missing in my house all the time.
Well, it used to be a bank, didn't it?
Different dimensions.
Used to be a bank.
Money goes missing.
Money goes missing.
Especially pennies.
And your house used to be a bank?
Used to be a bank.
That's interesting.
Next door to the go with you please.
Lives next to a funeral parlour.
All right.
Yeah.
We need a safe cracker to see whether it's still in the
Yeah.
safe, whether it's been
That's
deposited.
interesting.
One more.
So that's kind of it, really. I was going to open it up for questions.
For
So.
you and Ryan, what's your favourite paranormal film?
That's what your party piece is next time.
My favourite, if we're classing if we're classing everything as paranormal,
Sixth Sense.
I do like Sixth Sense. Fourth Kind, I would probably have to say. The Fourth Kind.
Ryan, you all too?
Don't know.
Bambi.
Yeah. Little Stitch.
Have you watched The Entity?
No.
With Barbara Hershey? Oh, that's a brilliant film.
Okay.
to watch, yeah.
I'll give it a watch.
Yeah.
But
Based on a
I
true
think the
story.
Fourth Kind. I remember when I went to watch the Fourth Kind, and it was one of those where my mum and my dad came, my brother and his missus came, and me and my ex. And for the whole day, I was saying, like, you know, I don't know why you're coming to watch this. Like to my mum, this will scare you. Like, you're not gonna like this. It's really. And anyway, everyone left. Like that was all right. I was the only one left. Petrified. And I don't know if anyone's watched The Fourth Kind, but it's about alien abductions, and they try and play it off as real. So it's supposed to be like found footage, and then they're interviewing the real person as this footage is happening. But of course, it was all fake. It was all actors. And what these people keep claiming to see while being abducted, they get under hypnosis. They keep seeing owls, interestingly. And I remember the night that we'd watched it, I used to share a room with my brother, and I came back, got up in the middle of the night, went to the toilet, and he must have been waiting for me. Because as I walked back in the room, he sat bolt upright and went, "Key." And I went, "What?" And he said, "There's an owl at the window." And I was like, just bolted straight for the bed, under the covers. And I could just hear him sniggering and from the other side of the room. So it was, a really good film, The Fourth Kind. And it didn't ruin it when I knew when I was watching it, they're actors. Of course this is fake. But petrified me, I think because I have such a belief in that kind of thing. Because I have a big thing on ancient aliens and that kind of stuff. And again, in that film, it's all based around Sumerian type. The one guy gets possessed and starts talking in this Sumerian language.
Yeah.
And he says, "I am ... God." And I remember that was it then. That really struck a chord with me.
Yeah, actually after the Second World War, when they were taking the Jews to Israel, the Jews of Sumeria were the Jews. They were the traditional Jew.
Yeah.
They were the oldest.
Yeah. The Sumerian was probably a different lecture, that isn't it? The Sumerian civilization are fascinating, really fascinating.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have a podcast. If anyone is interested in listening to podcasts, that's available. If you go to Facebook, you can join the group. There's about 30 odd episodes or so at the moment, and I interview anyone to do with ghosts, mediums, Bigfoots, UFOs. And I also have, not on here, but I host a live show called The Collective Conspiracy Show, which is a little bit more, talk about things like COVID and 9/11, when YouTubers are banning me.
Is that mentioned in your book, huh?
No, this is purely paranormal. Yeah, purely paranormal.
Right.
Do you want your money back?
No. Just so I could remember that was
but yeah, as Maureen's made me say, I do have a book. So this was the first book that I mentioned at the start, and that's the new book that I've just recently released. If anybody wants those. But yeah, that's it. I was going to open up to questions now, but I feel like we've got
Spirit Box.
Spirit Box. Yes. Okay, fine. So Spirit Box, we've seen some of these on the pictures.
I thought it was going to be huge.
No, that's a Ouija board. I'll show you that in a second. So I'm only showing this because David wants to see this. So this. So has anyone ever used one of these? You know what they are? No. So a spirit box essentially is, remember I said earlier, it scans frequencies, and when it gets to a station or a frequency, it doesn't stop. It stays for about a millisecond and keeps going. And the idea is that the spirit uses these frequencies to talk to you, to engage with you, and you can get answers back. It's good. It's okay. I had a really... should I tell the experience about my nan? Okay, fine. I just don't want to repeat myself in case anyone heard it last time. So my nan died, this is in the first book, my nan died between Christmas and New Year, several years ago now. And I, as you do, we all gathered around family's home. We were all around my mum and dad's, and my granddad asked if me and my brother would go and move the furniture back around at their house. They got the bed downstairs. So me and my brother went, moved all the furniture around, and my brother said, like, do you think she's here? Should we try and, you know? And I said, you know. And he said, go on, let's see if she's here. She died about 8 hours before. So, as any professional investigator does, I had one of these in my car. So I nipped outside, grabbed it out of the car, ran in the house, and set it up really quick, because I was like, let's just get this done and go. So like, anyone here? Nan, are you here? And we had this like kind of yes noise. As you've heard, it's just white noise, it's static. So we had this yes, and I was like, oh yeah, it could be anything. So I said, okay, I said, you know, Granddad's at Mum and Dad's at the moment, he'll be back soon. And then we heard Raymond. I thought, okay, that's my granddad's name. So I thought, what's the chance of that? So I said, yeah, Raymond, Granddad, he's at Mum and Dad's. That was followed by the voice saying, Adrian, it's my dad's name. So I was like, what's the chance of this, getting Raymond and Adrian? I said, yeah, Adrian, Dad. So at this point, I'm beginning to believe that I'm actually talking to my nan. So I was like, yeah, Adrian, that's Dad. And then she said, Kieran. But she said it, Kieran. She would never call me Kieran, it was always Kieran. And that's how she said it. I was like, so I've looked at my brother and I'm like, what is the, you know, you're hearing this, right? And my brother's gone, yeah, Raymond, Adrian, Kieran. I was like, what are the odds? So I said, right, okay, where are you, Nan? What's going on? And Nan said she didn't answer. And then it sounded like there was a lot of conversation going on. I was like, who are you talking to? And then she said, they're my grandchildren. So now we've got 3 distinct, accurate names and reference to grandchildren. And if anyone's used a spirit box, the chance of getting these 3 words in a row are very, very slim. Each very short, sharp bursts of words. So to get they're my grandchildren was fascinating. And we said, who are you talking to, Nan? Where are you? And at this point, we had terrifying. I said, terrifying? Okay, right. So I said, terrifying, what's terrifying? What's happened? And it stopped. So it was literally like this, no noise, nothing. And I can say it now because my granddad's also died. But I was whacking it off his coffee table to try and make it come back on. So I was hitting off the coffee, and then it kicked back in, and we had some static. And I was like, what's terrifying? What's going on? And then she just said, God. And I kind of just threw it onto the settee and left it. My brother stayed, and it told him to go upstairs to the bedroom and kind of stopped there. But because I don't believe in God. I don't believe that in God in the sense that organised religion believes in God. So for my nan to say it's terrifying and she's with God. So we've tried to explain it that she was in this kind of waiting room, limbo room, because she'd only just died. She didn't know what was going on. There were people there with her, and she's like, they're my grandchildren. And she was a bit scared. Didn't really understand what was going on. But really interesting. My nan was strange. My nan would call me up. I remember the once we'd been out. I'd been playing football, and I'd broken my ankle. And when as we were walking through the doors, we've literally just come back from the hospital. We're walking through the door. My leg's in cast. The phone's ringing. My mum answers the phone. Hello, Margaret. My mum and my nan didn't really get on. Hello, Margaret. And my nan said, how's Kieran's leg? And my mum said, what do you mean his leg? She said, how's his leg? And my mum said, well, he's broke his ankle. She went, his ankle, right, how is he? And it was just weird, like no one, we've literally played football, gone to the hospital, come home, no one knows yet. And she would do that all the time. She'd call up and say, like, how's Aid? He's feeling a bit under the weather, isn't he? My dad would have the flu, or not the flu, COVID or whatever it's called now. And she'd know exactly what was going on all the time. It's she's really strange, really strange. And so much sound complicated like a Jeremy Cole show now. So that was my dad's mum, and her sister-in-law. So my dad's sister is Beryl, who haunts the house that my mum and dad are in now.
Right.
And she always used to do spirit boards. She was really into that kind of thing. And the reason she haunts the house that we're in now is because she was born in that house. So you talk about synchronicity. So my mum and dad brought this house when I was about 8. So about 1997. And my dad obviously called his mum and dad and was like, you know, come and see the new house. So when my granddad got there, he said, I knew you were buying a house in this area, but I didn't know it was this house. And it was the house that my dad's dad had been born in.
Wow.
Didn't know that. And the house that they'd moved from was haunted by my mum's nan, but she's never followed. And we think it's because this is my dad's family's house, and my mum's nan doesn't want to step on their toes, so she's never made herself known, really. But my dad's side of the family are very. So my auntie, so my dad's sister, would often go to mediums, and she's probably that. She's a little bit that way inclined. She has a bit of that, and she once went to a medium and said with my mum, and they swapped necklaces on the way because they would always ask for a necklace. And when they went in, the said, give me a bit of your jewellery. So my mum gave what was my auntie's necklace, and she held it and she said, don't be stupid, go and swap it back. So there's stuff like that you know, you hear those kind of stories, and that's what I kind of had growing up, hearing those stories, living in a house that was haunted by my mum's nan, vase moving around, child gates slamming at the top of the stairs, stuff like that. So it was an interesting kind of growing up around that.
When Dawn was a child, she was about 6, and me and her dad lived in separate houses. That's another word for separate. So anyway, we were at my mother-in-law's house to see her and her dad and that. And her dad sent her upstairs for a record out of his bedroom. And she went upstairs and she come running down and she said, there's a panda on the bed. But it was a man dressed as a panda. But it was
terrifying.
So she come running downstairs. So there's me, my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law and my ex-husband in the living room, and we're all trooped up the stairs and there's nobody there. But it was a man dressed as a panda on the bed. She goes in and it goes, hello, Dawn.
See, but now you talk about screen memories and you talk about these things where they try and portray themselves as something that you would recognise so you wouldn't be scared. It's obviously tried to dress up as some kind of teddy bear or something so you wouldn't be scared.
You know what's really weird? I've got a granddaughter, well I've got several granddaughters, but Evie was 2 when my husband died.
Right.
And in the house they were living in at the time, right, soon after he died, she started seeing a panda. Right? And it only stopped when she moved house.
And I said, I seen a panda when she didn't know none of that.
So she didn't even know Dawn had seen a panda.
That reminds me of Drop Dead Fred, the film, where she's grown up and now the young person starts to see him.
This panda, she, you know, we could pass the pub and she would go, oh, panda's been in there. and she'd say things to Ethan, you know, our brother hated the panda because the panda was always getting Ethan into trouble because she'd say Ethan kicked panda.
And the
policeman came and blah blah. And Ethan says, I didn't do nothing. I haven't touched him. She'd say to Ethan, pick a tree because you're going to live in it. Where's she gone after? I don't know.
That's interesting.
This explains a lot
But
about Dawn.
then when they moved house, the panda disappeared.
Ah, right, okay.
Because I said to her, oh, is Panda going to move in with you? And my other daughter, I said, for God's sake, Mother, stop it. Forget the panda.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Of all the animals?
She doesn't see him now, does she?
Does your son see spirit?
My son just sees Fireman Sam.
Oh.
No, but I mean, he's only... it's interesting, actually. So he died not long after my granddad... He was born not long after my granddad died. And I often say, they were both ginger. And I often say... And people have said to me, like, he's been here before. Like my son, he's 18 months now, 20 months. And he has this very kind of bored look about him. Like, I've got to do this because it's what's expected of a kid. So, like, you know, he's in the bathroom, he plays with his water, but he just goes... and then he can play with his toys. Yeah, that's it, yeah. And then he plays with his toys and he's just like that. And it's like, oh, I've got to do this, I guess. And it's just like a chore for him. And people say he's been here before. He has. You know, we took him on a train the other day for the first time, and he just stood there like this. But I think he's enjoying it, but you can't tell. But anyway, I've got 2 paintings in my living room that are painted by my granddad, and he loves them. And he will quite often sit on the floor and go, point and start laughing at them.
Wow.
And sometimes he will wave, and you think, is he just a kid who's just learnt to wave, so he's just waving? And sometimes he just kind of looks past you. But I say like, who you looking at, and like, hello, whoever's there, and I say like, hello, granddad, or whatever. Because I think he does see stuff, but is it just a kid being a kid? I don't know. But if ever when he begins to talk, and if ever he says, there's someone here, I certainly won't dismiss it, because I'm not, as we've said, we shouldn't do that to children. So I think that's
it.
He sounds great.
Yeah, he's a little legend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We can't give you Truth Seat that hat because you've got one.
I've got one, yeah.
And why is it not on your head?
It is, I've got it at
Has Larry
home.
pinched it?
No. Do you remember the photo I sent you of Larry wearing it?
Yeah, Larry is my youngest truth seeker.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So we've got a little present for you.
Okay.
And it's based around Larry, actually.
Okay.
Yes, because this is 101 things I wish I'd known before I had children.
Yeah, okay.
And the speaker we had a few weeks ago was David Alderman, the People's Lawyer UK. And I thought this would be useful for you for when Larry goes to school. School is no place for children.
Okay.
So there you go.
Brilliant, thank you
Thank you very much.
Thank you.